everyone. Thanks for joining us. This is Sipping Tea with Nat and Z. I'm Nat.
And I'm Z.
What's up? What's up?
Nothing really. It's been, a little bit of a busy week for me.
Mm-hmm.
My husband's birthday was on Friday, so we
That's
just
right.
did some, fun things. Had someone watch the baby for us, and
Mm-hmm.
just hung out. And so I'm still kind of recuperating from all of those festivities.
Nice, nice.
What about you?
Um, my basement has been flooding, so off and on. So I've been dealing with that for about a week, and we had that person eventually come out and fix it, only for them to be like, "Oh, something might be wrong with your sump pump, which is running and has not stopped running." So we had to put in another request. Um, yeah, so it's been a pain in the arse, honestly.
Yeah, because I remember
Yeah.
talking to you. What was it? Thursday? No, Wednesday. I talked to you,
Wednesday.
and
Yes.
you were dealing with that. So I know that that has been a challenge for
Yes.
you.
And we had to go
So
buy a dehumidifier, a wet vac. They got into the gym, like, it's just, you know, everybody has a job and has a gift, but there are some people that just need to organize their business practices better.
yes, I will say that
Because
those are facts.
yeah, because what you said about Twitter, I just might have to do that.
You have to. And you know what? Now that you've said things about business practices, I feel like a lot of companies are going to have to start to really look at the way that they are operating their
Mm-hmm.
business and determine what changes they need to make for a host of reasons. I was watching the news recently where they were talking about companies having to offer people like signing bonuses because they
Mm.
can't find people to work. And I don't know if
Mm.
it's because of the fact that a lot of people are making the same amount of money they would make at some of these companies on um, unemployment,
Which is about to end,
which is
but I
about to
don't think
end.
that's it.
I think for the lower end, right? For
Oh yeah.
like the targets, and I'm not saying that Target is a lower end, I'm just saying for the lower end of the salary
Mm-hmm. Spectrum.
scale spectrum,
Mm-hmm.
those companies are offering like $500 signing bonuses. And I think it's,
Mm.
but people, if you're going to work there and it's minimum wage or a little over minimum wage, you might just be making more on unemployment.
Right.
Where someone like you or me, unemployment ain't going to
Ain't
shit.
gonna do not a damn thing.
It's not going to really, it's
Mm-mm.
just not going to do nothing. So,
Right.
but even those companies are starting to offer people like $5,000 signing bonuses. And here's the
Wow.
thing. I think I was watching this girl on YouTube or a TikTok or something, and she was
Mm-hmm.
talking about the work week as it stands now. And she got history wrong a little bit because she was talking about how Henry Ford created the 40-hour work week, and actually
Uh-huh.
with the unions, it wasn't him.
I was
The
like,
unions were fighting to
right.
get 40 hours because of what the hours were prior to that.
Exactly.
But she was saying, which I do believe there was some truth to what she was saying, because we talk about this a lot when we're talking about self-care and taking
Mm-hmm.
care of our mental health. She was saying that you know her generation, which was Generation Z, might be the generation to force companies to move away from the 40-hour
Mm.
5-day work week
Right.
and do maybe a 4-day work week.
Like they do everywhere else.
Yes, because they care about their mental health as well.
Mm-hmm.
Like Gen X, I think bought because the boomers were all about work.
Yes. For
Where I
the and loyalty.
Exactly. Where I think
Mm-hmm.
Gen X, our generation, started to care more about work life balance.
Right.
Where we want to work, but we also need some type of balance with
Mm-hmm.
that. And I
Yes.
think the millennials really took that to another level with
Right.
I don't have loyalty to
To
you.
anybody or this company.
When I come in the door, I want to be making my six figures and be the CEO. If not, then I'm gonna just go do my own thing. And
Right.
I need to be able to travel 80% of the time and work 20. Yeah. And that's not how it works. But I'm just joking, I'm being facetious, but they've expanded on the work life
Yes.
balance. I
And
think their work,
expectations.
yes, I think their work life balance is more like 50-50, where I think
Hmm.
Gen X is more like 70,
Yeah, because people,
30,
well, we're
60,
quick to
40.
work late for certain things and put in extra hours that some of our younger counterparts are like, I'm sorry, no. Is that
Yeah,
overtime pay? If it's not, then I'm not doing it, type of
right,
thing. They're a lot more vocal on their demands of what is being demanded of them,
right.
I would say. But I think that's good and bad. But I
Mhm.
also think because it takes away sometimes from the quality and work ethic,
Mm.
just because I don't feel like doing it. There's a lot of stuff in life you don't feel like doing, but
Right.
you got to get it done and push through.
Right.
So I think it's a unique time, and I also think with the fact of everything going on with unemployment, the pandemic has caused people to pause and think about what are they doing with their their lives, their choice of careers or
Mhm.
lack thereof.
Mhm.
I think I saw some on the news to that effect, like with the 48-hour work week and stuff like that. But at the same time, folks are like, look, I don't really want to do this job anymore because it's not what I want to do. More people are
Mhm.
like, I want to embrace something that I enjoy doing
Mhm.
and figure out how can I indulge my passion to
Mhm.
an extent. And then you have people that are just lazy. But I think that there's a lot of people reflecting on their endeavors and how
Yeah.
they get their funds.
And I think this is a good way to segue into talking about what today's topic is. It's living
Mm-hmm.
with fear. I think a lot of people are starting to transition away from being fearful to leave what
Mm-hmm.
they've known and kind of
Yes.
venture into the unknown, right?
Correct.
Because a
Mm-hmm.
lot of us, the reason why a lot of us stay, especially boomers, stay
Mm.
um in their jobs, like I realize now that at my, because we're government employees, a lot
Mm-hmm.
of government workers, the boomers, stay in one
Yes.
position for 45 years or stay in the government for
Yes.
45 years. And I'm like, why are you still here?
Right.
I don't plan on being in and still working.
No.
But there's a sense of fear there. It's
Right.
the fear of, well, what else am I going to
To
do?
do.
That's why a lot of boomers, if you see, when they retire, they go right back to work. I
That
thought the
is so
whole
true.
I thought the whole point of retiring was to not work.
Work.
So
Because they
why
don't
did
know
you
have anything
retire
else to
just to go
do.
back to work? And it's the fear of just being alone with your
Mm-hmm.
thoughts, being like it's just a lot. So,
Yes.
but that
Yes.
we're going to talk more about living with fear during this episode. So what is the tea of the day? Oh, yeah, the tea. What is the tea of the day? The tea of the day is what we're going to talk about, but the tea of the day is also what we're drinking on. And I'm
Right.
actually drinking the tea that's on the table. But please
Yum.
know that we're not tea experts. You should speak to your doctor when drinking herbal tea because could be potential side effects when mixed with some
Mm-hmm.
medications. It's not a substitute for medication, and we're not affiliated with any of these companies, and we're not endorsing them. So, what is the tea on the table? It's so yummy.
So, and I think we both love this one,
Mm-hmm.
London Fog Latte. And I didn't realize I've probably been drinking a version of this for most of my life. I didn't put the name to it. So, because West Indians love some Earl Grey. So, London Fog Lattes are made by combining sweetened Earl Grey tea with some steamed milk and vanilla syrup. It's a great option to get from Starbucks. Z hit me to this. I didn't know they did this. If you're on the go and don't want to drink a traditional hot tea blend, you can make this delicious concoction at home by using the following ingredients: a cup, about 8 ounces of strongly brewed Earl Grey tea, half a cup, about 4 ounces of steamed milk, any kind, almond, whole, whatever you're fancy, oat milk. I know that's a big thing now for
Mm-hmm.
folks.
Mm-hmm.
A tablespoon of granulated sugar, and one or more or less to taste. Don't be doing the diabetes sugar type thing in here. We're not trying to promote that. We just want to sweeten it a bit.
Yes, a
Yeah,
bit.
please, just a bit. And a quarter teaspoon of vanilla extract, store bought or homemade. And then you brew that for about 3 minutes and let it steep, and then remove the tea bag and add the remaining ingredients and serve warm. It sounds delightful. I'm gonna have some
It's
today.
very delicious. And I actually even
Yes.
saw a recipe where they took lavender flower
Ooh.
and they infused this with some lavender. So
Mm.
I said, I think I might try that. I forgot what the ratio of
Yes.
lavender it is that they use. And then you
Hmm.
do that and then you just drain it or strain it so that you don't have the lavender buds in there.
Yeah.
And then it gives it a little bit of, you
A little
know,
zhuzh. That's like
yeah.
lavender lemonade, which is tasty.
I haven't had a lavender lemonade, I don't
Hmm.
believe.
I've had it at one of the stores, and I've one of them holistic stores, and it was tasty. Just
Yeah,
a
I
little hint of it.
Yeah, just a little hint. So,
Hmm.
and fresh
Hmm.
lavender, if you have it, probably anything fresh is better than
Yes.
the
Hmm.
store bought stuff. So
So,
just keep that in mind. So
so
what's the hot tea today? I don't have a lot because
yes,
I'm tired and I just didn't do all of the research that I probably should have done for the
I think you're allowed to. Like
hot
seriously.
tea. So,
Z, just full disclosure, y'all. Z does like some amazing prep work and organizing all this. Much props to her. Gotta give her a shout out.
yeah, I just try. But I'm also type A, something that I'm working on. Obsessively. My husband and I had this conversation recently where I finally could take a step back and say, yes, some of that is a little overbearing. And if you are not somebody who is just like me, then I could see how that could be overbearing, to be overly prepared, in your face all the time, like it's a lot. It can be, and I saw it myself because I was like, I had to take a step back. I was like, wow, I am doing a lot right now, and we both busted out laughing because it was just like I was fully aware that I wasn't even on 10, I was on 20,
Oh
and
damn.
it looked so crazy. And he's like, I can't. Your brain and my brain do not work the same. And you are overloading me with information right now. And I stopped listening about 3 minutes in.
Oh
He's like,
damn.
you didn't see that? And I was like, oh, yeah. I was like, damn, I did just like go off the deep end. I was a little spastic there. Let me roll it. Let me reel it back in a little bit.
It's all
So
good though.
yes, it is. Hot tea. So Sha'Carri Richardson, we talked about her. It was really going to be Black Girl Magic at the Olympics. It's
Right.
going to be Black Girl Magic -1
Yes.
because was tested. She tested positive for marijuana,
Mm-hmm.
and so they gave her an immediate. She basically admitted to it. They gave her immediate suspension of 30 days,
Mm-hmm.
so she can't compete in the 100 meter. And then they thought, well, her 30-day suspension will be done right when the relay races would start.
Right.
So
Mm-hmm.
people were saying, well, she'll still run in the relay race. And then they were like, the Olympic team was like,
Mm.
nah, sis, you're not going to be on the team either. And
Damn.
so she's 21. 4 years, she'd be 25. I mean, you look at Allison Felix. You look at a lot of other track stars. They they run it well into their 30s, early 30s. I mean, you have to be mindful and cognizant of the fact that the older you get, your body isn't going to be the same. I mean, if she takes care of herself from now till then, I fully feel that she'll be prepared for the next Olympics. I mean, the Olympic trials are probably in another 2 years. So,
Mm-hmm.
you know, I don't see this really hindering her that much. It's a disappointment. I mean, Nike didn't, I don't think they did. They didn't get rid of her endorsements or anything like
Okay.
that. And I think that that's more because marijuana is acceptable. Whereas when Michael Phelps got caught, like he lost a whole lot of stuff, even
Yeah.
though he did it outside of the Olympic time frame.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and here's what I'll say about it. There's been a lot of debate. People saying, well, those are rules. She broke it. You know, marijuana's not that bad. The Olympics should stop tripping. She knew, da da da. This is how I feel about it. She basically said, yes, I knew it was a banned substance and I did it anyway. She's 21 years old. And we talked about this recently about cancel culture and how people just like to just cancel people for making mistakes. This is a prime example of, I saw somebody say, well, she said her biological mom died. That was just to gain sympathy. As someone whose mother died at a very young age, regardless if you have a relationship with her a positive relationship with her or a negative relationship with her, that is going to have a negative impact on you regardless, because you're going to think about all of the things that you're not going to be able to do. You're not going to be able to repair that relationship if the relationship is gone. You're not going to
Yeah.
be able to
Mm-hmm.
ask key questions that are definitely going to be needed for this girl's healing
Mm-hmm.
as she gets older. Trust
Yes.
me. It's going to help her when she's in therapy at 35 trying to figure out why she's made certain mistakes.
Mm-hmm.
Um, you know, I feel like that, there's something going on. She might not have the right team of people around her.
Yes. That part.
And, I just feel like probably the way she grew up, there probably a lot of things. There are a lot of layers there. So I'm just going to say give her some grace. She's 21. She says she's human. She is. I'm not going to pass any judgment on her because we have all made some questionable decisions in our 20s.
Mm-hmm.
Um,
Mm-hmm.
I will say if after this mistake she hasn't grown or learned, and here we are hearing about her monthly about
Mm-hmm.
something she's doing, then that's a separate conversation. But for
Right.
right now, I think we should just give her the grace to make this mistake, learn from it, get better people around her to help push
Yes.
her forward.
The people around her, I think, is going to be a key takeaway
Right.
for her because I think if you had, yes, you have choice, not to take anything away from her agency,
Mm-hmm.
but we've all, a lot of us, you and I, knowing, being friends for over 20 years, there's certain things that we advise each other on,
Mm-hmm.
like, hey, I don't know if we may not tell you not to do it, but we may be
Right.
like, so we don't know if that wasn't the case. Maybe she had people around her that were like, yo, shit, calm
Mm-hmm.
down. But I think it definitely speaks to making you kind of think about the company you keep when it
Right.
comes to your dreams and aspirations, how authentic people are,
Mm-hmm.
and where jealousy may come into play or
Mm-hmm.
not, and just
Mm-hmm.
well-being of the people that you are in your circle or in
Mm-hmm.
your tribe. Um, we all know how those things and the dynamics of relationships can go, and people are closer to other people than others and
Mm-hmm.
listen to other people versus some of their other friends. But it does bring to question how, for her to maybe sit back and think about, how do I handle this moving forward as I get older?
Right, right. And I tend to, especially in your 20s, I tend to give you a lot more grace than someone in their 30s or 40s, right?
Mm-hmm.
Because again, I can't imagine growing up in this time span at 21.
Yeah.
Like, I don't know what questionable decisions I would
And
have
they all would have been
possibly
recorded.
made. You know what I'm
Mm-hmm.
saying? And again, it speaks to, we all are in, okay, there's a lot of things like that you think you know better, that you'll do
Mm-hmm.
better, but you don't. People know that being in abusive relationships are not healthy, but people still
Exactly.
get into abusive relationships, right?
Mm-hmm.
There are
Mm-hmm.
so many things that we do in our 20s that we think you should know better, but there's a host of reasons why people do things that they do.
Exactly.
So,
On
like I
so
said,
many levels.
I'm going to extend her grace and just hope that she learns from this experience, get better people around her, and pushes forward through this. Ain't nobody gonna be there to watch the Olympics anyway, because Tokyo done said ain't no spectators
That
allowed.
part, I saw that.
So, I
Mm.
mean, you know,
There's
I just
that
hope
part.
she does better. I just hope she does better.
Mm-hmm.
Um, Recently we had the versus battle with Bobby Brown and Keith Sweat,
Yes,
and that was hilarious. It was like
it
two
was.
drunk uncles. Well, one drunk and one who was an addict that's sober now, just talking shit and shooting shit. It was entertaining.
It was.
I'll say
I didn't
really.
watch all of it, but it definitely was
Neither
parts.
of them can sing. There is Bobby was. Ooh, it was painful. Both of them. Um,
Oh,
but it was entertaining.
it was.
But I
It
don't think
was.
Bobby did a good job with curating his
List.
list. Because he should have played some songs earlier than other songs.
She would have
Um,
had a little bit more sustainability.
yes.
Or
Um,
stamina or whatever.
Right. But it was entertaining. I can't, it was entertaining.
It was entertaining.
And apparently they got the notice like 48 hours before they went. So this
Huh?
wasn't something. Yeah, I read something that they took the call 48 hours before, cuz I don't know if Versus had two other people lined up
Uh-huh.
for it and it didn't work out. So they found replacements and they did it quickly.
Oh.
That's what someone said, because you didn't hear who it was until like 2 days before the Essence Festival was supposed to start. It's like, oh, it's Bobby Brown and Keith
Oh, that's
Sweat. Like,
right. The Essence Festival. I keep forgetting. That's
so I
right.
mean, like I said, it was enjoyable. I
Hmm.
enjoyed it. I mean, that's all I can say about that.
It was entertaining.
It was
It
entertaining.
was entertaining.
Um, and recently, Mark Lamont Hill and Judge Joe Brown, uh, they
What's going on with
both.
that?
So Mark Lamont Hill had Judge Joe Brown on his show. And basically, Judge Joe Brown was just like, they were talking about Bill Cosby, and Judge Joe Brown was like,
Um,
F them women, pretty much. Like,
what?
that's what they did back then. They took drugs. Quaaludes were drug of the choice back then. And if you came in there, you should have, like, basically, it was saying, whether you knew or not, you know that that's the environment, so that's on you. And
That
so
was the
they got
culture at the
into this,
time.
right? So they got into this heated debate. People were coming after Mark Lamont Hill, saying like, it's funny how you want to come at Judge Joe Brown saying X, Y, and Z, but people were coming to your defense with the whole, because when he got kicked off of, was it CNN,
Mm.
for the whole Israel Jews and
Oh.
Palestinians, and so he got kicked off of CNN for pretty much taking Palestinian side in a situation and basically saying what people already know, but people are afraid to say.
Right.
Um, and so he got kicked off of CNN, and so they've been
Uh,
beefing, and it's just been. But Judge Joe Brown has been on one. I would say anybody go and just type in Judge Joe Brown and
uh-huh.
see some of the interviews that comes up. This man is crazy. Something wrong with him. Like, some of the things that come out his mouth,
What?
I am like appalled by. Like, literally appalled by. Um,
Oh my.
it's bad. So just take opportunity and then just check it out. And I think
That's pretty much
that's
it.
pretty much it. I mean, unless y'all care about loving hip hop folks.
I don't know
Um,
what's going on with that. Who started? I saw Housewives of Potomac is starting.
Oh, I don't
This
know.
I don't know. I don't watch those, so I'm not sure. I just
Well,
know one of them lives up the street from us now.
Oh, okay. You
Yeah.
you know
Hmm.
Safari, who Safari is? He was Nicki
Yeah.
Minaj's ex-boyfriend.
Right.
And so now he's married to Erica Mena,
Uh huh.
and they're getting a divorce. And they
Was
just
she
had
pregnant? They just
yes,
had a
they just had
baby.
baby number
Okay.
2. She had the baby early. The baby is in
Hmm.
the NICU, and this fool is in Jamaica living it up like he don't have a care in the world.
What?
So people been coming at him, and he's been posting. See, here's the thing: it's one thing that you're in Jamaica and you're celebrating your birthday, but he's in Jamaica celebrating his birthday and posting it on IG Live, like videos, and it's just like,
What?
wow,
And
your
you're
child is in
in a
the
NICU,
NICU.
not
And
just in the hospital, in a NICU.
NICU, and maybe I'm sensitive because I've had a child in the NICU, and she was
You're
in NICU
human.
for 11
Yeah.
days. So I'm a little sensitive to that. And people say, well, she should never say she ain't want him in the hospital room. She said she ain't want him in their delivery room. As somebody who understands how stressful giving birth can be,
Mm-hmm.
you don't want somebody in the room that's going to give you,
Yes.
and I understand where some
Anxiety.
people may come from, like, he's a father, he should be there. But in that instance, it's the most important thing is the health of the mother and the health of the baby.
Mm-hmm.
And if I, as the person who's giving birth and bringing life into this world, feels like your energy is going to be a little bit too much for me,
Mm.
I just don't want you in the room. That's not to say that I don't want you there for our child. I just don't
Right.
want that energy to have a negative effect
At that
on
moment.
that moment, on me being able to bring um life into this world. And they have an
Mm-hmm.
older child, so he saw the birth of that child. So, and I feel like he is just very immature, because I would be like this: You,
How
my
you
child
not?
is in
I
it
don't. Oh my
in the
goodness.
NICU, fine. You don't want me in there because I'm gonna stress you out. All right, whatever. I'm not gonna trip over that. But I'd be damned if I leave
Mm.
my child who's in the
Yes.
NICU and just be like, oh, I'm partying, I'm living it up, I'm doing this. Like that just basically shows you the type of individual he was in the marriage. And that
Mm.
shows you why they're
There you
probably getting a
go.
divorce.
Boom.
That is all you
And
need
who
to know.
you with in Jamaica? What kind of friends you got that your
He
child
is
didn't?
from Jamaica. He's from Jamaica. He's
I don't
Jamaican. But
care.
I wouldn't go. And I, it is what it is. I just hope. I mean, she got her own issues. Erica Mena
Yes.
ain't the cleanest of the clean, but
Right.
in terms of shit she's done,
Mm-hmm.
but we're talking about the child, and that's the most important thing. It's not about
Agreed.
what's going on between me and you. It's about what's going on with our
With your
child.
child.
So,
Mm.
but that is what it is.
True that.
So
True
that's all
that.
I got.
All right, y'all. We're gonna take a quick break and come back, and we're gonna jump right back into our tea time segment. And we are back. So, like Z said, today's episode is about living with fear. And according to Psychology Today, fear has the ability to alter our perception of reality in many different ways. There are two kinds of fear: one acute, which is life saving direct fear, which heightens our awareness, and the other one, which is a slowly sneak up on you type of fear, indirect fear, which lowers our awareness. The same basic emotion, fear, it can produce completely different results depending on how it enters our reality, how we receive it, and more importantly, how do we cope with it. So, specifically, acute fear. It's like, for example, being in the midst of a car accident. The fear of losing, at that moment, you're in the fear of losing your life. And this type of fear actually gives you power by being able to tell you what to do right now. It's kind of like the flight or fight response where your body, you know what to do in order to save your life. Um, it's very important and it's automatic. And a lot of times it's that much more heightened in individuals based on their traumatic situations. The other one is indirect fear, which is being perpetually reminded of negative things which you seemingly have no control over. At least in your mind, there's no way that you can control what's happening to you. It can lower your awareness, it narrows your perception of options, and stagnates your sense of time and space. It kind of disorients you. Um, and it's kind of like whatever you do, it gives you the thought process that whatever you do, no matter what, you're never going to be good enough. These things are like, it's like that gnawing little fear that kind of keeps you from doing certain things. Makes you think, what if I'm going to lose my job because I do X, Y, and Z? The fear of of an invisible virus, of just being, kind of looking around all the time, thinking something's wrong, something's going to happen to you. What if I get it? And then the fear of the war on terror. How do you even? There's some people, as you know, and that's where some stereotypes come from, that the war on terror, the only way they can adjust it or attack it is by being fearful and thinking everybody's coming at them at any time and space and wherever they are. And when they see something, they report something, but it may take over their life, and they just live in, I guess, kind of like in our day growing up, Z would be kind of being considered a scaredy cat for some folks, where that's like their
Mm-hmm.
constant state of
Mm-hmm.
what if this may
Mm-hmm.
happen,
Right.
what about that, and what about this, and not to say there isn't a validation for having some of those fear, but it may be a little bit, it may take over your life,
Right.
and completely, um what's the word I'm thinking of? It take over your life in such a way it hampers anything that you do, and then you can't function as a person. So
Mm-hmm.
how do you do, like, and if you get into that point where fear is running your life because you're in essence a scaredy cat, so to speak, maybe unjustifiably, what does that look like? What does fear look like when it runs your life? You know?
Yeah, and so the fear that we're going to focus on today is the indirect fear and how to limit its direct effect on your mind, your body, um, and how to reduce the fear in your life. So to first even get into that, right? You have to figure out, is fear ruining your life? And there are ways that you can kind of determine that. You say yes when you mean no. So what does that mean? You're afraid to disappoint people or get rejected if you don't say yes. You fall into fear based, people pleasing, self sacrificing behaviors
Mm,
that lead to resentment. And this happens to a lot of us.
yeah,
We don't want to be rejected, we don't want to be seen as the person who's not cooperative. And I think women do this more.
unfortunately.
Unfortunately, we tend to be more people pleasing. So we do that in our personal
Mm,
relationships, our friendships, our work friendships, work relationships. We
yep.
say yes a lot when we really want to say no.
Yes.
It happens a lot. It happens a
Mm,
lot. Um, but you can also do the reverse. You say no when you mean to say yes. You're afraid to take risks, or when you are afraid, you're unlikely to take risks. You'll say no because you're afraid to fail, you're afraid to succeed, you're afraid to get rejected, you're afraid to stir things up, you're afraid to get out of your comfort zone. And this is what we were talking about earlier. Like, if you're like, we know people who have been institutionalized by the government,
mm-hmm.
and they tend to be baby boomers, and
Yeah.
they tend not to want to rock the boat or stir things up. So
Mm-hmm.
they stay in the same position for years and years and years because they
Mm-hmm.
don't want to go out of that comfort zone. So when they
Mm-hmm.
do get opportunities for growth, they want to say yes, but they say no because a
Yeah.
lot of times you don't want to show your weaknesses, and we all have them. And to say that you don't, you're lying to yourself. Everybody has a weakness. And I think we are afraid sometimes to show that weakness. And so we just say, no, that's okay. No, I don't want that. That promotion? No. That opportunity, that training opportunity? No. 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 So it's it's it's
It's interesting, but
it
and
is
also leans on, well, that's how it's always been. So
right.
why would I change it? It works.
Exactly.
If it's
If it
broke, don't fix it.
don't fix
Without
it.
and realizing there's a something can still be improved upon without
Exactly.
changing it completely, but going with the times. But
Yes.
there's fear of that because your fear
Yes.
of being that you're antiquated, you're out of date,
Huh.
that you're
Yes.
not up to snuff. Then this is why folks are going to come in and replace me, or something to that effect. In this particular example that we're talking
Right.
about.
Exactly. Do you find it hard to, or do you struggle with making decisions? So when you're afraid, you avoid making the decisions your soul knows you must make because you're terrified of the uncertainty. You know where this shows up a lot? Relationships that no longer serve you. A lot
Mm.
of us stay in relationships that no longer serve us, stay in
Ooh.
jobs that no longer serve us,
Mm.
stay in friendships that no longer serve us
Mm-hmm.
because we can't make the decision the decision that we know we need to make. When
Yes.
we talk about women's intuition, that
Mm.
is real.
Ooh, we need
So
on a
you're
show just
sitting
on
there,
that.
yes, with that pit in your stomach, and you say, I know I
Yeah,
don't need to be at
guts.
this job anymore. Why
Guts.
am I still here? I know I don't need to be in this relationship
Mm.
anymore. Why am I still here?
Mm.
I know I don't need this friend in my life anymore, but why am I still here? A lot of it is because you're afraid of what happens over that decision.
Mm-hmm.
What's waiting for you on the other side of that decision?
Right.
If I leave this relationship, if I leave this marriage, if I leave, where's my life going to go?
Right.
If
Mm-hmm.
I don't have this friend in my life anymore, where am I going to go? If I leave this job, what's going to happen?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
You might fall on your ass.
You
But
might.
guess what?
You may
You'll
take
pick
off.
it may have the opposite effect.
This is true. You never know.
You might
But
leave a
yeah.
marriage that you've been in for 20 years
Mm-hmm.
to find somebody in a year or 2 days, get
Yes.
married, and live out the rest of your lives happy.
Yeah. I've seen that happen before.
I think that's the biggest thing, especially again for women.
Mm-hmm.
I think like I feel like men don't have the problem of making it like they take risk. Period.
Oh,
I think
well,
they're
yeah,
risk takers, right?
hands down.
And I think that they are the type of people like I'm going to quit my job to be a rapper, and you're just going to deal with it,
And now
or
here I am,
right, or I'm going
chocolate
to
drop on your doorstep,
exactly, or I'm gonna leave this marriage after being with this woman for 15 years. It is what it is,
and I'm out.
and I'm out. Men take those risks more,
Yeah,
where we women, I think, tend to be like, oh,
we will think of the long term. Men are like initial instant gratification
mm-hmm,
more so, and
yeah,
then that they're like, okay, if I deal with it, I deal with it, but then if I don't, I don't. There has to be some level of conscience there. Not to
right,
say that men don't have conscience. However, with that risk taking, I think that supersedes. Well, what if there's the what ifs are negated when
mm-hmm,
some men take risks
yeah,
because they're
yeah,
like, I'm gonna just see what happens.
yes, yeah, yeah, yeah. You know, this next one I feel like is me. When I say I'm type A, it is
Mm-hmm.
a nicer way of saying I am a control freak. And when you are afraid, you feel like you need to micromanage everything. You think you live in a hostile, random world that's out to get you unless you grab the wheel with both hands and steer your life towards what you want.
Mm-hmm.
And I feel like this is me in a lot of ways. And I'll say this is something, and I've said this before, and this is something that, you know, I've learned in therapy. And this is something that may help a lot of people moving forward because my therapist always told me, you know, anxiety is worrying about the future, depression is worrying about the past. We get
Mm-hmm.
depressed over a lot of things that we can't change because they've already happened, right? Our
Mm-hmm.
anxiety is about the things that we know will be coming up in the future. I have anxiety, and my
Mm-hmm.
anxiety manifests, I'm a control freak, and my control freakness manifests itself into anxiety
Mm-hmm.
because it's just like I'm afraid. And I know that a lot of that has to do with the way I grew up, right?
Mm-hmm.
There are a lot of things that happen in my. I saw my sister this weekend, and we had this conversation about we grew up in the same household, but we grew up different
Mm-hmm.
because we're 4 years apart. So my childhood it looks a different than her childhood in some
Right.
areas, right?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And so from my perspective, there were a lot of things that give me anxiety for the future, right?
Mm-hmm.
Food insecurity has been a big issue for me. And
Mm-hmm.
I'm a control freak, so I purchase things like they're going like you could come to my house and probably eat for like a year.
Good to know. When
And
the
never
zombie
go to the
apocalypse
store.
comes, we going to Reese house.
Because it's ridiculous, right? And I think when you are a control freak, or if you are somebody that's a type A, you kind of feel like you live in that's really fear that you're
Mm.
living with. It's
Mm-hmm.
just a different version of fear. And you don't identify it as fear because you're not really dissecting what's at the root of why you're being
Mm-hmm.
such a control freak. And
Right.
it's literally fear. Your fear of being out of control, your fear of losing control, the
Mm-hmm.
fear of not getting the things that you need, you know,
Mm-hmm.
not being, you
Being
know,
in want, being in a state of
exactly,
want.
exactly. So if you are somebody like that, a type A, if you self-identify yourself as type A, if people have told you you're type A, if you consider yourself a control freak, or people have identified you as a control freak, just dissect that,
Mm-hmm.
get to the root of it, and I guarantee you there's some fear at the root of that. And
Mm-hmm.
or the foundation of your control freakness
It's from that
is fear.
portion. Mm-hmm. From
Is
that
fear.
position.
Um you find yourself striving in vain for an impossible to achieve standard of perfection. You're afraid of criticism, failure, and rejection, and you'll do anything to try to become perfect. And there's no such thing as perfection.
Mm-mm.
Nothing.
It doesn't exist.
There's nothing. It
At least
doesn't.
man-made.
There's
Mm-mm.
nothing that there isn't. You know, you think that there is because this is what's especially in this day and age social media may
Mm.
tell you there's something perfect, that person has a perfect body, that
Mm-mm.
person has this, that person has that, the perfect life, the perfect salary, the
Yeah.
perfect job, and it's bullshit.
All of it. All of it.
It's bullshit. And when you're afraid, the thing is, if you're afraid of criticism, failure, and rejection, you are going to try to do things to become more
Mm-hmm.
perfect. You may
Mm-hmm.
go, and I'm not speaking negatively on anybody that does this, but you go get the BBL.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
What is that? Is it a fear of being rejected by somebody that you like? They don't see you as a perfect woman,
Mm-hmm.
so you want to go get stuff done to yourself. Are you, are you putting yourself in debt for school
Mm.
because you don't want people to think that you are less than them, so you're going to get all of these degrees because you feel like if I get all of these things then I will be
Mm.
perfect?
No. No. Nope. Nope.
That's fear talking.
Mm. If you want to do it for yourself because it's something you strive for and an accomplishment you want, but if it's being supported or fueled by that fear of what everyone else may think, that's a different conversation.
Mhm. Um you settle for less than your dreams. Again, we talk about this. When you're afraid, you
Mm-hmm.
you you don't take risks. You don't go after what you really want. You
No.
convince yourself that your less than quote unquote juicy life is as good as it's going to get. And then when fear runs the show, you forget how to dream.
Mm.
I will say, and in a lot of sense, and in some ways, this may be me. Like, I know somebody, you know the person, who
Mm-hmm.
every 2 years, she's like, okay, I don't want this job. Fuck this job. I'm going to find me another job. Like, yeah, I'm out. Like, you don't wanna, I'm gone.
Like
And I can't
deuces.
do that. I'm afraid to do that, right? I'm afraid if I do get this next job, I'm gonna hate it. Or I'm gonna get this
Uh-huh.
next job and I'm gonna get fired because I'm not living up to some and who's talking to me and telling me this? Nobody's telling me this. I'm telling myself this. I
Right.
right? Like I remember this is good. My sister recently had been unemployed for a very long time due to COVID, right?
Mm-hmm.
She had lost her job as a downsizing. And so she'd been out of job for a while. And it was taking a toll on her mental health. She
Mm-hmm.
finally got a job and she hated the job. Hated the job. Good salary, hated the job. And
Right.
she was telling me she would have panic attacks. And I mean, my sister does a lot of the editing for us, so she's going to hear this. I love you, Stephanie, but hey, it is what it is. She would have like panic attacks and anxiety attacks. Oh, you're so dramatic. It's a effing job. Like, why are you getting so worked up about an effing job? And like me and her would talk about it, and I'm
Uh-huh.
like, it's work. And then I realized, no, you cannot put your fear into her. Stop doing that.
Yeah.
You're speaking from a fear based place. This woman is
Mm-hmm.
telling you that this job is affecting her mental health,
Yeah.
and you trying to put your perception of what the reality is, what you
Mm-hmm.
believe the reality is around that, on her, and that's not fair.
Right.
And she took a chance. I did tell her though, you don't quit that job until you find another job. I don't care
Right.
how bad it is, because what you don't, it's easier to get a job when you have a job than when you don't.
Mm-hmm.
I said, just stick it out until you can find another job. And she wound up finding another job. And she did
Mm-hmm.
say, I'm glad that you told me that part. All the other stuff you told me, you can stick it up your ass. But that part,
Here's Stephanie being like, all right,
that
Reese, that's it.
part was spot on. All that other shit, I wasn't trying to hear it. But that was spot on. And she's so much happier now, right? Because she
Mm-hmm.
wasn't afraid. She's like, look, I'm going to take this chance on me
Mm-hmm.
and I don't care, right? Where I was just like, oh God, you're just gonna be without a job again. What about money? What are you gonna do? But that was
Right,
my
right.
fear talking for
Mm-hmm.
her, you know?
Mm-hmm.
You procrastinate a lot. Are you a procrastinator?
Mm.
You're afraid of putting yourself in the arena because of fear of failure,
Mm-hmm.
success, uncertainty, judgment, criticism, or rejection. Again, fear is surrounded with these. It's like fear and these things are pointing to it. So
Mm-hmm.
if you're afraid of criticism, if you don't like criticism or rejection, all these things are fear based, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yes, there are people who are afraid of success. And I know
Yes.
that sounds stupid, but there are people who are afraid to succeed because now they feel like now I got to really keep that
Do
up.
right and keep up with what everybody thinks I can do.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
And that's fear for a lot of people. Um, so a lot of people tend to sideline themselves.
Mm-hmm.
They'll sideline themselves.
I'll be all right. I'll just be over here. I'm
I'll be in the
good.
cut.
I'm good. I like being in the background.
Yep.
When they may in fact not be the case
Hmm.
at all, but you've been so comfortable,
Mm-hmm.
but borderline apathetic, because if you start to get that twinge where you have to go back and forth with yourself, like, I really should step out. No, I don't want to step out. I know I have the skill set to step out, but I'd be better off, or it'd be better off for everybody else in
Mm-hmm.
your mind.
Mm-hmm.
That's because I don't want to mess anything up. I'll just stick with what I know.
Yes. Yes. Yes.
Hmm.
Um, we tend to silence ourselves when we're fearful. When fear is running the show, you avoid speaking up for what you believe in. You won't let your voice be heard when your integrity is being threatened. You won't tell people when they've hurt your feelings. And you're too afraid to ask for what you really want. And we see this in a lot of
Mm.
different arenas, right? You see something like, okay, you're having a disagreement with somebody, right? Case in point, there are a lot of topics out today that cause a lot of disagreements in friendships and relationships, right?
Mm-hmm.
You could be talking about the Bill Cosby thing, or you could be
Mm-hmm.
talking about, the Olympics treatment of black women, or you could be
Mm-hmm.
talking about, I don't know, whatever.
Taxes.
Right. There are a lot of things that you could be talking about that can make you butt heads with somebody, right? But if you're afraid, right, to speak up for what, if you're not speaking up for what you believe in, that's fear talking, right? Because you're
Mm-hmm.
fearful that this person who's your friend is now going to reject you and not want to be your
Mm-hmm.
friend because you're really telling them how you feel, right?
Mm.
Or your friend hurt your feelings, but you don't want to tell that person that they hurt your feelings for fear of what they're going to say back to you.
Mm-hmm.
But why are
Mm-hmm.
you afraid? If this person loves you and cares about you, then you should feel comfortable with saying these things, right?
Mm-hmm.
Um, so so people don't realize how paralyzing fear
It
can be
is.
in our lives, right? Um, you go into work and you want a raise, but you don't want to. You're too afraid of rejection, so you
Mm.
don't even ask for one. What's the worst
Ah.
they tell you? No.
No. I know. I
Hey, I
told
want a
my
ten
boss the
thousand
other
dollar
day.
raise. No.
Mm-hmm. Okay,
Okay.
I asked. I asked.
But if you don't, what they say, closed mouths don't get fed.
Yep. So
Unless
true.
you're in a situation where you can't get it. Like me going to my boss now asking for a raise, it'd be like, did you bump your head? Do you remember where you work? This is government. It don't
The
work like
government, they
that.
don't care. You could be like, you got a raise. Okay, that's nice. Anyway, guess you,
You'll get your cost of living increase at the
right.
beginning of the
You better
year.
leave this agency and go somewhere else if you want to increase.
What step are you? You're step five.
Right.
Okay, wait, you get another raise in 3 years.
Yes. 3 years. If you're lucky. If you're lucky.
But some of us have the ability and capability of going to our bosses and saying, "I want to be paid what I'm worth." But you can't get that if you don't open your mouth, right? And then this one, I think, covers so many things. You
Mm.
get sick. Fear could trigger a stress response in the body that puts you at risk of disease and makes it hard for the body to heal itself. Perfect example, COVID. There are people who are afraid of just leaving their home, doing anything because of what could potentially happen to them. But if you don't regulate that fear, it's
Yeah.
going to have a negative impact on you. I know specifically, this person may not have made themselves aware of it, but I've seen the impact that COVID has taken on somebody close to me. They're always tired, their body is always aching, they're always just exhausted, their stomach issues. And I'm thinking to myself, this is fear. You so worked up with the fear of everything going on,
Mm-hmm.
you just worry too much.
You worry
And some
yourself
of that
sick.
worry, you've worried yourself sick. And I'm not to say that I am not a worrier. I've just learned I can't be fearful of everything because you're not going to live life. If you're afraid to do anything, think about how many missed opportunities, missed
Mm.
things that you have missed
Right.
just because of fear.
Yeah.
I don't
So
want to
many
be
things.
so many things. I don't want to be 80 looking like, damn, I should have did that when I was 50, but I was so scared. I was so fearful. I was filled with fear and with worry. And I'm not saying having a normal healthy level of fear is good.
Mm-hmm.
But I
Mm-hmm.
feel like some people take live in such fear
They can't do
that
anything
they're paralyzed and they cannot do anything.
and
And I'm
can't
not,
enjoy
again,
life.
no. And
Mm-hmm.
again, such as life,
Yeah.
there are going to be things that are going to come up that are definitely going to have you be a little fearful, but don't let it paralyze you. So in a nutshell, all that is to say, that is how fear is ruining your life.
Right. And then, but how do you move past that? So now that we've established that how fear can ruin your life, how do you move past the fear that is trying to ruin your life? Because
Mm-hmm.
you don't necessarily have to acquiesce to that. You can just acknowledge that that's going on and make some changes. And looking carefully at the things you are afraid of. And we've talked about this on numerous occasions, and Z brought this up. Things in your past can impact how we view the present. That is very telling, and
Mm-hmm.
it's just kind of how I think folks really need to acknowledge how much of an impression your past can have on you in your present day activities. Look at the current information on things that are triggering your fear. Why am I worrying? Is it something low risk? Like Z mentioned, sometimes we're afraid of the fact we're afraid of the unknown just for the sake of being afraid. And then where does that come into play? Is it fear or is it anxiety? And yeah, which
Mm.
is so key. And Z made a really good alluded to this really well earlier. Fear is defined as an emotional state triggered by real, actual danger that is in front of you. So it's inherent. It's a physical response. And then you look at fear as a positive, instinctive emotion, and it serves you to protect you from to get and to make sure you get out of danger.
Mm-hmm.
Your things get heightened, your heart starts beating fast, you get an adrenaline rush so that you can hurry up and take off to go wherever you need to go to save yourself or protect yourself. And then whereas anxiety is created from the image or the perception of danger that's not actually present in that moment. So sitting there thinking that something's going to happen, it's the what if, the fear of the what ifs. Well, what about this and what about that? According to 2011 statistics released by the U.S. Department of State, there you are 35,000 over 35,000 more times more likely to die from heart disease than from a terrorist attack. Do y'all hear that? Like really thinking about the things that day to day can affect your life, like heart disease, versus something happening um, in a terrorist attack is more so an anomaly. And of course, anxiety is a major factor contributing to this, as well as understanding the threat and the impact of heart disease. But it doesn't make sense to focus on the threat of, well, is this going to happen every day? You're going to wake up and think, oh, there's going to be a terrorist attack today, instead of taking that fear to say, what do I need to do to make sure I'm taking care of myself so that I don't develop heart disease
Right.
in that situation. Be
And when you
realistic.
exactly, and it's weird because if you look at it, right, heart disease there is anxiety is a contributing factor to heart disease.
Mm-hmm.
If you are more likely to die from heart disease than a terrorist attack, you're being counterproductive by worrying about if a terrorist attack is going to happen every day because you're causing anxiety, which then has an effect on your heart. Like,
Exactly.
it makes sense, but that's with anything. If you're afraid of catching COVID, I mean, it's a real fear.
Yeah, and that is a real fear.
If you are afraid to, I mean, as parents, we're afraid to let our children out of our sight, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like, there are just certain things that trigger a level of anxiety, but that level of anxiety then has a negative impact on everything else in our lives.
Yes, on your parasympathetic nervous system.
Right. So if you look at that, then you should say to yourself, is this worth being anxious over? Is this worth being
Mm-hmm.
fearful over? Because it's just going to have a more negative impact on my health than what I'm actually worrying about.
Yes, exactly. And having to be realistic about it and put everything in context so that you can put that in perspective as to what it is you're afraid about, so you don't further contribute to your heart disease situation.
Mm-hmm.
you know And this is where logic comes in. I mean, because think about what Z just said makes sense logically. You worrying about that is causing an adverse effect on your health and your about your heart disease in that situation. Logically, it doesn't make sense to be upset and anxious over something because inherently it's causing detriment to you. Ask yourself, what exactly do I fear, and how realistic is that fear? Like, is it really possible and plausible that it can come to fruition? And sometimes, a lot of times, the fear is unwarranted because the risk is so low. And then at some point, we kind of realize, oh, it wasn't that big a deal. Kind of like being afraid of your shadow for some reason, and then you realize, oh, it's really no big deal. And but you got all fixed up, all worked up about it. And then, to be aware is one thing, but are you fixating on certain
Mm.
things? Like, is that
Fixation
all
also,
you
yes.
do?
Fixation also leads to anxiety
Yes, yes.
because some
Focusing on
people
one thing.
get so hyper focused on one thing that that's all they talk about. It's like da da
Mm-hmm.
da 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 da. Oh my god! Oh my god! Oh my god! Oh my god!
What about
COVID!
what if?
COVID! 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 COVID!
Mm-hmm.
COVID! COVID! Or whatever the fear is.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and then you're so fixated on it. It's just like, well, how is that helping?
It's not, because there's nothing you can change about it in that moment. If you're
Mm-mm.
you're upset about it, only thing you can control, and this is where control in a good way comes into play, because you can figure out ways to calm those fears by using and practicing mindfulness and meditation. And it'll help you kind of quiet your mind if you need like 10 seconds or you're getting anxious, kind of count. You know what folks say about the anger, when you count to 10 before you do
Mm-hmm.
something. And the same could be said for something when you're anxious.
Mm-hmm.
And not fixing on it, because you'll give yourself like 10 minutes or a couple minutes to be like, okay, is this realistic? Is this a valid concern? Maybe I just need to take some deep breaths and realize it's not coming at me in this situation. And then do it habitually, so that you can sit and think about, well, and observe, are my thoughts realistic? Are they really in line with the perception of fear and what is actually happening? And
Mm-hmm.
adjust your mindset accordingly. And meditation and mindfulness can really help with that, and deep breathing, that we've said, on numerous shows before. Um, and really, one thing that I think is huge is take control of what you can. And that's where we come in with the control issue. Control is one good thing on in this regard. Take control of what you are able to regulate your level of fear and your perception of fear. And understand, that there are things you can prepare for yourself to make yourself feel better if you're fearful of a particular situation. So if you can plan stuff out to a point, that are areas that are controllable, that will help alleviate some of that fear, great. I'm not saying go hog wild and like plan every little thing and then you get upset when things don't go to the way you want to, because you have to allow for a contingency, if you will. But, just think about that, and then understand, yes, some fear, of course, can be overpowering, but there is fear that is healthy. A healthy amount of fear can protect us from ourselves. So sometimes being able to discern the difference is that there's a trick in, I guess I wouldn't say a trick, but that's the a challenge for folks trying to balance, well, how do I take control without it being overpowering for my life?
Mm-hmm.
And then how do I recognize that fear is a good indicator that I need to fall back and just let things be, but I'm also preparing myself to make better decisions moving forward,
Right.
you know?
I would say, like I said, me being somebody who, and I'm very transparent about this, being somebody who suffers from anxiety. um I understand fully how that fear can level up to the anxiety, and how that anxiety then takes control of everything, right? And one of the things I definitely had to learn from the list that you just gave is that to accept the things that I can't and take control of what I can. And I think that that is one of the key things to take away from this, because I think that that is like the foundation. Once
Mm-hmm.
you realize that I can control these things and these are the things that I can't, I'm not going to worry about these things. I'm not going to be fearful of these things because
Mm-hmm.
there's nothing I can do about these things.
Right.
I can only do something about the things on this side of the fence, but I can't do anything about the things on that side of the fence. And because of that, you know, I think if we're mindful of that, like we talked about, when you're practicing mindfulness and meditation, when you're doing your meditation and you're doing your mindfulness, when you sit there and you say to yourself, hey, let me think about the things that I can control. I can control this. I cannot control that. So I'm not going to worry about those things. I'm just going to worry about the things that I can control. And if I can control these things, how is there any fear based around that? Right? But I think that this was a good conversation for us. So, with that, we're going to take a quick break and come back with our last sip of the day. And we're back. This is the last sip of tea with your Hood Dalai Lama. I am your Hood Dalai Lama. Today's quote is, never trust your fears. They don't know your strength. And that is attributed to Athena Singh. I don't really have anything else. That's all I prepared for. Because I don't live in fear, as for y'all coming at my neck about giving y'all some more words of wisdom, I didn't even try. Well, thank you for joining us this week on Sipping Tea with Nat and Z. You can follow us on Instagram at sippingtea_Nat and Z_pod and on Facebook at www.facebook.com/sippingtea_Nat and Z to get information on upcoming podcast topics, guests, and news. Thank you for listening, and we will see you next episode where we will discuss how to have difficult conversations. Thank you.